Hello, in this demonstration tutorial I'm going to teach you all sorts of techniques enabling you to make these different styles of little fish earrings, which are also useful as connectors in this larger necklace, this larger pendant necklace, which we'll also be learning how to make. So the big fishes and all the little fishes swimming around. I'll go through techniques for jump rings and clasps and all sorts of things, and also sort of wonderful design you can progress on to arranging the fishes together to form this triple fish pearl necklace with Amazonite details. So I do hope you enjoy making up the designs, and let's get on with the tutorial. I'm just going to go through the tools that you need to make the projects. You need a set of pliers, chain-nosed pliers used for manipulating and bending wire with nice fine points. I actually use 2 for when I open and close the jump rings. You need round nose pliers for making little curls and loops in the wire, and flush cutter pliers for cutting really lovely straight edges on wire and jump rings. I also use a bead mat to stop things rolling about and to help gauge me the size of the necklace, and it's ever such a good work surface to work on. You'll also need a hammer and a steel block for work hardening and flattening metal to create a lovely shiny reflecting surface and stop metal being too flexible. And a set of mandrels for making jump rings. You now either use gizmo mandrels, a 3mm diameter and a 5mm diameter mandrel, and those you can use to make the 5mm external diameter and 7mm external diameter jump rings that you'll need for the project. If you haven't got one of those, a little step mandrel is also useful on the middle and the end setting. Those will make the jump rings you need for the project. And I also use a little needle pokey tool just to create to make the holes in the pearls a little wider when I was threading the wire through. And that's all you need. So let's get started. Here are the materials you'll need to use to make the projects for the fish earrings and the necklace. 1mm copper wire, 0.4mm copper wire and 0.8mm copper wire in a silver plated finish. You'll need 7 and 5mm external diameter jump rings, which I made using the 1mm copper wire on some mandrels, 3mm and 5mm mandrels. 6 and 8mm diameter white shell pearls, beautiful and round and a lovely finish. And Amazonite, we've got a fantastic strand of 2mm diameter faceted Amazonite, but you can use a similar sized seed bead, probably 11 O's, which would be about the same size. For the earrings you'll need shepherd hook earring findings, and for the design, both earrings and the necklace, you'll need some plenty of silver plated copper ball head pins. Well, I hope you enjoy making the designs. Here are the templates used to make the little fish earrings. There's a left hand and right hand mirror image earrings, so you can make them facing either direction. If you print this out using the ruler as a guide, you can print it to scale. Just make sure a 6mm pearl can fit into the eye of the little fish. You can see these templates have also the frames next to them, so you can see which way the wire travels when you make the shapes. And we're going to start to make one of the pairs. I've got 30cm length of 0.8mm wire, and I'm going to make a bend with chain nose pliers about 1/3 along from the end, like that, sharp bend, and squeeze either side of the bend just to sharpen it up, and that makes a little cleft bend in the tail. So I'm now going to just start to shape the base of the fish with little movements of the chain nose plier tips, using the diagram as a guide. Squeeze either side of the base of the tail, bring the wire round, and then gripping near where you want to make a bend, bringing the wire around with your fingers, again gripping the wire, and then using the chain nose pliers to make the bend. For the lower fin, similar thing for this end, or the base of the fin. Just make sure that tip is in the right place. Reshape that bend if it's not. And then bringing the wire around from the base or the bottom of the fish or the belly of the fish. Use flush cutter pliers just to cut the wire tail. These diagrams are so useful for making regular, similar shaped forms if you want to make, especially earrings where you need to make them fairly similar to each other. So I'm going to use chain nose pliers to make the other side of the fish, bringing this wire tail round for the other side, gripping either side of the base of the tail, going to whiz along the back. Just take, again, much more time than I am. I'm just showing you the basics of forming using the diagram. And I'm just going to grip along. I'm just going to flatten that little curve out a little bit because that's better. Make sure that's a little less bendy than that. Now I've formed the little back of the fish, bend outwards to form the first lip and top lip, and I'm just going to bring some round nose pliers in, and just working really near the tip, pull the wire around with one hand while gripping the wire in the round nose pliers with the other. Bring chain nose pliers in and grip really close to the lower part of that little lip and make a tight bend, again working in on the other side of that bend just to make that bend tighter. Bring in round nose pliers just to make the other little loop. There we go. It fits pretty well against the diagram, so that's fine. And now I'm going to make the lower cheek of the little fish. Bring this round. Gripping around here, you can bring in a mandrel just to help you make the eye. And just shape, I'm just going to come out, just shape around the mandrel for the eye. You can use free form, you can shape it yourself, but look how easy that is. Make a little circle. Zoom in a bit again. Now, if it's a little bit big, you can easily adjust that, but you've made the circular form already, which is nice. It's just a case of a little motion just to adjust that. Press that flat with your fingers. Now the wire goes over the body to form that top fin. You can adjust it all afterwards, but just make sure you've just got general positions of bends in the right place. The rest of the frame will tend to distort as you work with it, so just be to watch that. A few little crinkles across, little bends as you work across the back fin, and cut to size. Now I've got one little fish there, just adjust it to size, ready to work on. You can use this to make an earring on its own, but we're going to work on hammering and curling this little fish in the next section. Here you can see I've curled the wire tails for one of the fishes. I'm just going to curl it for the other. So you can see the direction of the curls, but I'm putting round nose pliers in to the very tip of the wire tail. I'm working with the tips of the round nose pliers. I made a little curl. Just cut the tip of the curl off so it will curl more effectively into a circle, because that little straight end won't curl very nicely, and a little rotation, like little rotation will bring that into the curl. Same for this side, curling towards the fin, not away from the fin, and that helps make that wire tail into a lovely detail. And now we're going to be able to hammer these, again, little rotation of the round nose pliers to bring that curl into place. So we've got both little fishes curled. I'm just going to hammer this fish first of all using a steel block, and I'm going to just hammer on the edge of the steel block so you can see that section. I'm going to hammer the tail on the back of the fish with a little 1 ounce hammer. I'm also going to hammer the curls and the fins, moving them away from the body a little bit so I don't hammer crossed sections of wire. That's the last thing you want to do. Hammer the lips. Don't hammer the body section. and then just hammer the other fin, just moving it slightly away from the body and only hammer the fin and the curl. Bend it all back into place again, and you can use a diagram as a guide to help you do that. So you haven't hammered the whole of the fish, you've just hammered sections of it. So we're now going to move on to adding some beads into the fish now. I've added a 30cm length of 0.4mm wire, working with the midsection of the wire, and I've wrapped it around the lips, intersection with the lips and the eye, and just wrapped it twice here. And I'm just going to wrap along the side of the eye socket for a couple of wraps here within the mouth, 2 wraps here. And then I'm going to catch the side of the upper side of the face with 2 wraps. There you go. And then maybe 3 or 4. Let's go for a few more. I'm holding the whole fish with one hand while I work with the other. And then just bring the wire around just in the eye socket. And then work round so that it's halfway along the socket. I'm going to do the similar thing on the other side, then come back and show the adding of the bead in. I've wrapped on halfway down the eye socket on the upper eye socket, just catching the top of the face as well with a couple of wraps, then just wrapped along the eye socket itself. Now I've threaded on a 6mm pearl to one 0.4mm wire, and before I did that I just gently reamed just the whole ends so that I could fit the 0.4mm wire through. It's only just the ends you need to do that with, and just to take some of the coating away that's covered the hole. Put the 0.4mm wire, the other one, through the other side of the pearl, and then pull it very gently through. We're going to bring that pearl into the eye socket, and it's called a crisscross bead attachment. Put a finger in there just to stop everything kinking, and pull it into shape. You just need to hold the pearl into place in the eye socket while you pull firmly with either wire. Now I'm going to wrap along the eye socket to the base and cut this and tuck this in, and then we're going to move on to the netting of the fish. I'm just going to show you some of this process of working around the eye. This is for the longer demonstration. And you just need to thread that wire in and out around the eye socket, just carefully popping it in and out through. And there will be gaps. All you need to do is find the gap near the crisscross the wire here, and just make sure you press the wires up into, with side to side squeezes of chain nose pliers, just to press them up into so they look nice and tightly packed. I'm going to just move on to the next step where I'll show you just the trimming of the wires at the end, the process of doing that. Here I've wrapped down either side of the eye that we've just added in. I'm just going to cut the wire tails just on the inside edge of the eye socket and just press down the little wire, the wire tails here, the wire ends. Now we're going to add in some netted scales, so we're going to move on to that next. I'm using an 80cm length of 0.4mm wire, and I'm going to wrap about 15cm from one end around this little cross section at the top of the upper fin 3 times, and then I'm just going to wrap with the shorter end of the wire all along the top of the head. And then cut and tuck the wire in as far up near the eye socket as I can. So I'll come back to you when I've done that. Now we're going to net the scales of the fish. I've attached an 80cm length of 0.4mm wire across the top fin. I've attached it 15cm length from the end and wrapped along the top of the head and cut and tucked in that wire. So we're going to make the first scale using a netting technique. I use mandrels just to help me get the scales to size, and it might be that I have to zoom out again because I'm going to work at a higher level. So bringing the mandrel up, I'm going to make a full size scale around a 2.5mm mandrel. One of your gizmo mandrels will do, and I've got the step mandrel just to help me. Pulling the wire around to make that circular shape. Thread the wire through and around the gill edge. This might be a little bit fiddly. And you can wrap once around here. You can pull it quite tight. It's a little bit fiddly. Wrap once around here. Pull that wire as close as you can so the scale is circular, and it'll help you get it regular size all along the top row. And then pull that round, ready to make the next scale, put it back into the body of the fish. Now you need to hold the first scale really carefully with your hands so it doesn't pull out of shape, and just make the next scale along. I made it into the eye, which is quite a good, the cross section of the eye here. It's quite a good anchor point for the middle scale. Again around this 2.5mm mandrel. And pulling tight. I only need to wrap once there. I'm going to pull that scale down a bit, pull it down just to make sure it's the same size, pulling it down like so, and I'm going to make a third one along the top of this fish here, again around the 2.5mm mandrel, and at this point I'm going to wrap around this intersection of the fish. This is for the longer version. I'm going to wrap around the intersection of the fish a few times, again keeping the mandrel in place. So I have to move to, you have to sort of use quite a few sort of guiding positioning, and sort of you have to alter the position you're in. Again, I'm working under camera, so I can't really work as close as I normally would. So wrap around this intersection 3 times, just to really pull the fish together. See me doing this now. There you go, that's pretty much attached. Make sure they sit side by side. And now I'm going to wrap down the side of the fish so that I can reach a level where I can put the next row in. So you can see what I've done there. As I'm wrapping, I'm pushing each wrap into place with my finger. Just make sure it's really tightly packed. So each wrap is placed, and you have to hold the frame quite carefully to stop it distorting, because you're putting quite a lot of force on it as you push. And as I wrap also, I'm just straightening and pulling the wire out so that it doesn't kink. And that keeps the wire nice and smooth, because you don't want any kinks in the scales. Keeping on going. And we're nearly ready to make the next row. I'm ready to start the next row. I've wrapped along, I've bound 3 times around this little gill edge, and I've wrapped along carefully along the lower side of the fish and trapped this lower fin with a wrap around the curl too. I'm just going to use a slightly smaller mandrel to make a sort of half size scale, because I want to travel up to this this scale on the first row, And so I'm going to use, oops, in the wrong place, going to use a smaller mandrel, a 1.5 millimeter diameter mandrel. It's the same one that you'd probably have in the smaller gizmo rod. So pulling the wire upwards towards the first row of scales, just a bit, again, a bit fiddly, just take your time. And I'm just going to pull this into place. Can you see? Little pull, and it makes a half size scale. And next one, I'm going to make a full size scale, much bigger scale, on that 2.5 millimeter mandrel. Make sure you bring the wire into the, I'm just going to make sure that doesn't distort, into the space. Hold that previous scale in position with your fingers and just bring it around the larger mandrel and wrap around just once around that middle scale of the first row. Make sure, there we go. Make sure it catches in the lower edge of that scale. And I'm going to just check that size, put it down into the body of the fish. And what you do need to do is just neaten up this first attachment with a little plier squeeze front to back, so and pull that scale down into position. Now I'm going to work along putting more scales in, and there's more detail in the longer demo, but I'll talk you through what we've done in a few moments. This is for the longer demo. I'm just going to carry on this row. You could choose to make, I think I'm going to make a half scale or a half scale size. Well, I'm going to make a slightly bigger scale to fill this space and come to this fin here and just wrap around. Sorry, there we go, I can see it. You're going to make a bigger scale here just to bring the scale round to the top edge of the fish. Yeah, there we go. Press that flat, make sure these frames are side by side. I can almost take that out, I think, that mandrel, and just work away with it. That's it. And let's press that down. And I'm going to just work down to a level where I can start to do the next row, you see. And it's very, very similar all along the fish. Like so, I'm just going to move that curl upwards a bit now, because I don't need it so close like that. And then I can start working on the body of the fish now. Sorry, it's in the way. I hope you can see what I'm doing. There we go. Almost not quite ready to add the next row in. I'm wrapping along the body of the fish a little way. Each fish scales will probably be slightly different because of the shapes of the fish or the tension you put on, all sorts of different things. But with this scale, I think we just need to pull that down a bit. Can you see? I pulled it down. And you can also squash that. And keep pulling it down so that you've got the row at the same level, ready for when you want to start the next row. Okay, there we are. I'm probably ready to start the next row. So again, with this one, I'm just going to do a junction up to here, junction up to that one, and maybe a half scale. And we'll see if we can fit another row in. I think I fitted 3 rows into one fish and 4 into the other. So I'm just going to do that now and then come back to you in a minute. I've put in 3 rows of scales into this little fish and wrapped along the tail. I've also kept on pulling down the scales into the body of the fish further down towards the tail, and kept on squashing each attachment side to side, front to back, to make sure that it's crushed into place, but don't squeeze too hard, just enough to neaten it up a little bit. I'm pulling a half scale into this central scale. Just got to make sure it pulls down the fish, and then I'm going to thread on a little 2mm Amazonite to start beading into the tail. I'll come back to you when I've done that. I've threaded on a 2mm Amazonite, and I'm going to wrap to the fork in the tail. You can wrap twice if you like, just to make sure that, and really pull that downwards. You can pull the scales down into the fish, and then I'm going to add on another bead. As long as you add 2 beads in, it's got a fairly organic look, this little fish. I'm going to add another bead in a moment, and I'll come back to you when I've done that. I've threaded on another Amazonite, and I'm going to pop to one of the last in that third row, pulling tight, pulling everything down, and then I can wrap along the side of that tail, as long as you've got 2 beads in there somewhere along the line, so you've got the same on each earring. You can wrap along the tail to the same level as on the other earring, sorry, on the other side of the fish, and then cut and tuck in that wire. So I'm going to come back in a minute and show you what to do next. During the project, you'll need to make plenty of wrap loop connectors for the bottom of the pearl fishes and the little earrings. You'll need to make 8mm dangles for the necklaces, and 6mm dangles for the pearl dangles for the earrings. I'm just going to show you how to make them now. So first of all, I'm going to use one of the 6mm pearls, and just use a reamer or the little pokey tool I was using, just to enlarge the hole at either end. It's only because some of the coating of the pearl encroaches over the hole. Pop a head pin through. It's a ball head pin. You can use a flat head pin if you want to, and just make a sideways bend at the other end of the pearl, just to help keep the pearl in place and to mark where you want to start the loop. Insert round nose pliers into just to grip the wire tail just as it exits the pearl, and pull with your other hand the wire tail around in a loop, and you can choose the size of loop by the position along the cone of the round nose pliers that you want to make, and I'm doing it about halfway along. And try and keep all your loops about the same size, because it just looks better. So I pulled it around, and the wire tail is projecting to one side. Now bring in chain nose pliers and grip across the loop. And you can actually adjust the size of the loop in 2 ways, the little pushing motion here, or you can just do a anti-clockwise little rotation, just to change that loop size. And also, if there's any play in the bead, you can bring the loop down towards the bead a bit more closely. So now I'm going to grip across the loop and pull the wire tail around the bead like so. And you can, I'm not wrapping down the bead too much because I don't want to cover the pearl at all. And then what I'm going to do is just bring the flush cutter pliers in, and I'm going to cut as close to the loop as I can. And then I need to smooth this little tail down, because there's a little tail here that's projecting out. And just grip round. I'm just smoothing round in the direction of the wire tail, just to push that down into place. I can squash across the loop just to flatten it a little bit. And this also makes sure that it's nice and perpendicular to the pearl itself as well. And there's a little wrap loop connector ready to put onto one of my earrings later on in the tutorial. Here is the earring ready to finish. I've got two 5mm external diameter jump rings, a wrap loop 6mm diameter pearl on a head pin, and I'm just going to attach that in to one of the tail loops with a pair of chain nose pliers, and bring the other 5mm jump ring into place and just pop it through the loop so it's suspended in between the tail fins, like so. Use the chain nose pliers to close that loop nicely. There you go, that's it. Then using the shepherd's hook, just open the little loop at the base of the shepherd's hook and pop it through the little top lip of the fish, closing that loop nicely. And you've got that little earring ready to wear. Here is the template that I used to make all the fishes up with, and there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little frames you need to make, and they're all marked on the diagram so that you can work through them. The purple line shows a main fish body frame, which has 2 tails that you curl later on with the dotted lines. That's in the purple line. Then the orange line is an eye frame, like so, what we're going to make. Then you've got a fin frame with a larger upper fin and a slightly smaller lower fin. There we go, that's a little green line. Then you've got 3 rows of scales, all fitting down the body, one with 3 lobes, one with 2 lobes, and one with 1 lobe. So that's the other frames there, and they were shown in different colours with edge lines. And the main thing you've got to do is try and make sure that when you do print it out to scale, because I'll pop a ruler next to this, and you can freeze frame this, take a screenshot and print it out to scale using the ruler to help you. So that's quite a good way to do it. So take a screenshot of this now. Sorry, I got my hand in the way. And take a screenshot and you can use it. And take a screenshot of the frames as well to help you work from them. And just make sure that the eye bead, the eye space fits an 8mm bead inside. And these little thin scale spaces fit a 6mm bead inside. Now we're going to move on to making the frames now. Just to show you here that in the 3 fish design, you'll need 1 fish facing the other way. So you need 2 fishes facing the same way as the template and 1 fish facing the other way. And all you need to do is make the frames in exactly the same way, but just turn them over and when you make this one. Okay, so what we're going to do is move that out of the way, and we're going to make the main body fish template working on the purple line. So taking about maybe a 40cm length of wire, of 1mm wire, make a bend right in the centre. Let me see, yeah, right in the centre of the wire we'll go for. There we go. And make a sort of a little squeeze either side just to tighten up that bend. This is going to be where the lips, the mouth and the lips go. So I'm just going to then insert round nose pliers either side of that bend and loop them around to start to make the lips. And this will be, the loops can be quite wide because you can put jump rings through them and they're attachment points of the fishes. So actually nice wide lips are great for this design. So popping that on the diagram, you can see that those lips are just about right. So I'm just going to make a sideways bend at the base of the lips. Just going to do that on both sides, and then just check on the diagram that I put them in the right place. It's a gentle bend first of all. That's about the right place. So what I'm going to do is curl the wire around. We'll do one side first. Curl the wire around for the back, and then curl the wire around for the front, for the belly of the fish. Make sure that you spend a bit more time just to make sure that you've got the shaping right. just so that if you're making one fish, it doesn't matter so much, but if you've got making multiples and you want them to look fairly similar, you see I'm taking the line down the centre of the tail. I'm going to bend this wire outwards here for the minute, and we're just going to work on one side of the fish first of all. So bring this one again round the centre of the tail, bring this wire around, and I'm holding this wire quite tightly so that it doesn't slip around. I don't lose the length that I've carefully measured, and make a slight bend here, clamping along that either side of the bend to sharpen it up, and back up again, and until the wire hits where you had the body of the fish, holding the pliers, those plier tips as close as you can to the body of the fish there. I'm going to make a sharp bend round, clamping either side to really sharpen that bend up. Clamp on the other side of the tail to make the outer part of the tail now. Bringing the wire around on the outside edge of the tail. That's going to spring away a little bit, but that doesn't matter. As long as I feel I've measured it right, I can just reshape it at the end. Now, it needs to come down a bit. Can you see? So I'm just going to just take it off slightly, clamp hard either side of that to really make that a sharp bend. So clamp there, and that's made that bend really sharp. And slightly more diagonally pointing downwards, that's better. So then let's make a sharp angle actually this way, following the dotted line, and then cut to size using flush cutter pliers. And what you can do is just, I'm going to work on the other side of the tail in the same way, but what you should end up with is a frame like that. And I've worked down this side, making those tail fins in exactly the same way, and then follow that dotted line to make that side of the tail. So we're going to move on to make the eye frame next. The eye frame is shown by the orange line here on the diagram, and needs to fit an 8mm pearl inside it. You can use the diagram to help you shape the round, or you can just taking a 20cm length of 1mm wire, just shape it around a mandrel or a pen just to help you achieve that circle to start with. You can see I've just circled it around that just to help you. A pen will do quite well, just to help you get that initial circle. There we go. And if it fits, you can just make it larger and smaller just so it fits inside, and then just make a little bend near the base of the circle. So I'm just going to take the pliers and just move that outwards, just do gentle bends to start with, just to make sure you got it in the right place. And then I'm just going to loop around one side of it just to show, I mean, they're just the same way you made the lips really. You can use chain nose pliers or the diagram to help you shape, or you can put round nose pliers in there, clamp in, or sorry, pull the wire around with round nose pliers, hold then the wire near the circle with chain nose plier tips, and then pull the wire tail around to make a little bend. Just check it's in the right place, that's lovely. Clamp either side of that bend perhaps to make it a little bit tighter, and then insert the round nose pliers in again to make another little loop. Just make sure it's not too big. Another little loop. There we go. And then you can check that's in the right place in the diagram. And I'm going to make a bend just with a slightly more, I suppose, acute, sorry, not an acute bend, not as tight a bend, less acute bend, is what I meant to say. And because we've got to bring it round to the front of the eye, and another sort of little flower petal shape or eye shape, just to make the eye look really pretty. And then bend that last little tail upwards or any wire tails left over used to make jump rings. Okay, so that's what you can do, and then bend that upwards and cut to size, and do exactly the same as for the other side. Do exactly the same for the other side of the eye, and you should end up with a little shape like so. The fins are made in pretty much the same way as the tail fins. All you had to do is take a piece of wire, which is probably about, I've got to say 25 centimeters long. You probably won't need more than that, and just start to curve it around the face with a little gentle curve with your fingers, and then start to bend the side of the face, just so you mark the position nicely where you can start to make the fins, and use exactly the same technique as you did for the tail, clamping those bends either side to sharpen them, clamp the intersection of the bends to sharpen them, work all the way along. That little last bend is just a little triangle, and then cut to size. So that's the fins. And then lastly, it's all the little scales that you need to make. They're all made in exactly the same way with with loops. I'm just going to show you one of them. But you can see you just follow down these three sets of frames just to make one with 3 loops, one with 2 loops, one with 1 loop at the end. So we're just going to make maybe the 2 loop one just to start off with, to give you an idea. Short bits of wire, so you can use all those scrap bits you cut off from making the fish and the body and all these other things. Keep those to one side as well for making these little fins. Scales. So a sharp bend in the middle, just squeeze out the side with chain nose pliers, and then all you need to do is loop around. You can either use a pen, mandrel, round nose pliers, anything you like, just to help you start making the curve. Like so, even your fingers just to pull it round. And you're going to need to change the size a little bit. So let's just see what we've got. These are far too big and far too deep. So what we need to do is just move this upwards a little bit on either side. On this one here, on either side. With a 3 loop one, you'll need to make another loop. And with a 1 loop one, you just need to make 1 loop and a bend to either side. So that might just need to go in a little bit tighter. More or less okay. That one can come in a bit. And then grip near the bend that you want to make, or the bend you want to make. Again, and then just push to the side, place over the diagram and cut to size, and do the same for the other side, and you've got your scales made up. So just follow those same techniques and make your 3 rows of scales, and we're going to move on to the next section now, where we're going to curl and hammer these wire tails. Right, all these little wire tails need to be curled to make some lovely curly shapes as part of the design. So I'm going to work through the techniques of maybe this first, this one, and all the others are done in exactly the same way, and I'll show you the curl frames at the end. So this one, you'll just need, with the main fish frame, you just need to bend this upwards, and if you want to work in the opposite direction with an opposite fish, you'll just need to bend this outwards very gently. I'll show you, and then pop it up the other way. The same with the other one. I'm going to pop it back again because I want to use it facing that way for this fish. Okay, so you'll just need to make sure that it faces so that you can have the fish facing the other way. You need the wire tails facing upwards. So now bend these wire tails slightly upwards with chain nose pliers, away from frontwards from the body, and that's it, because we're going to just hammer those in a slightly different plane to the rest of the fish later on. So what I'm going to do is just curl outwards, so placing round nose pliers into the end of the wire. Just move that away so you can see what I'm doing a bit more. working near the tip so you can make that curl as small as possible. Curl the wire outwards, away from the design frame, not inwards. I'm just going to cut off the very end, because as we all do, we just always do, we just cut that end off. The end is really compressed metal. It's straight and it won't curl properly, and you'll end up with a really awkward curl, maybe even an oval curl, if you do that. So what we're going to do now is just bend outwards and just curl about halfway along on this frame. There we go. So that's done like so. Don't curl too much of it. In fact, I'll probably need to bring that up a little bit more, like so. So that's ready to hammer now. I'll show you the curled frames, and then we're going to do some hammering techniques. I'm just going to finish off curling the fin frame, and just to show you that rotational technique of, once I've cut that little initial curl off, you reinsert the pliers into place and just gently just do a very loose curl with a very small rotation of the pliers as you bring them in, as you bring the curl inwards. You can see how I've curled all the fins. I've curled them outwards and downwards, just leaving a little bit of loose. It's not curling them right back to the frame or the loops here. Again, the eye is curled outwards and downwards, and the fins I've curled outwards but towards the fin shape itself. So study the direction of the curls and just make sure you get them right. We're now going to hammer them. I'm going to show you the hammering process for each little piece, so you know what to do and where to hammer them. Or I'll talk through some of it as well, because you don't want to just watch me hammering for 5 minutes. So we're going to hammer this section. Don't hammer the face section, because we're going to be wrapping along that. But we can hammer everything else, so that's fine. And you can use a large face hammer, which I cannot find at the moment, so I'm going to have to use a small face hammer. Now, because this fish is facing this direction, I need to have the larger fin at the top and smaller fin at the bottom. So when I hammer, I'm going to have to pop that over, turn it over, and I can hammer the back of that so that everything unmarked will be at the front. So I'm going to put my fingers over the bit I don't want to hammer and hammer along. I'm not going to hammer these little intersections too much. I'm just going to really hammer more at the end, so flattening that section out more. And the curl. So you can see these little bits have ended up thicker than the struts at the side. And the same for this section too. A little hammering here, and then more at the ends. A little hammering here, and then more at the ends, and more at the curl. So it just gives you this lovely graduated hammering effect. You can slightly reshape. You can use a diagram as a guide, and that's the fins hammered. When you hammer these side curls, you just need to hammer them all the same. Don't hammer these central sections at all. You just hammer the very curls at the side. Because these are mirror image, these can fit either side of the fish. So go back over that if you want to make them a bit more fat. And that's it. That's the scales done. I keep on calling them fins, so forgive me. The next bit is the eye. Don't hammer anything of the eye except the curls. That's it. And with the main body of the fish now, we're just going to hammer the lips. So I'm going to just turn the fish over and hammer the side of the fish, like so. I've got it on a rubber block so it absorbs some of the sound and the vibration. On a rubber mat. Back of the fish, back of the lips first of all. Don't hammer anything else. But we're going to work on the tail now, and I want these curls eventually to fold back over this direction. So this eventually will be the front this bit part here. So I'm going to hammer the back of it. Now I've got this block set too low, but what I would do is put it on the edge of a table and hammer that like that. So I'm just going to do that after we've finished this video segment, because all you need to do is have it on the edge of the table and hammer here and here, here and here. Okay, I'm just going to hammer the tail, the back of the tail, and then come back to do those curls, and I'll show you the finished hammered fish in a minute. So I'm just going to make sure, again, hammering mainly the end of the tail. That's it. And when you do hammer this, you can see the hammered effects. Here's a finished one where I've hammered the end of the tails, like so. So there's everything hammered, and I'll come back to you. We now need to add some beads and pattern into the designs now. We're just going to work on adding beads into the eye now, and I've wrapped along the inside edge of the circular space in between the two wire tails for about 7 or 8 wraps, with a midsection of a 0.4mm wire length of about 40 centimetres. We don't want these two wire tails to meet. We need a bit of a gap here, so that's why I've wrapped for so many wraps. I'm just going to wrap around this wire tail twice, catching it in place. And when you're on the outside edge of that second wrap, thread the wire up through the loop and do the same on the other side, so that we can just add in a little Amazonite bead to the, I just need to pull that a little bit tighter. There we go. Add in a little Amazonite bead to this little space. So cut the wire end if it gets ragged. That's why I always use a slightly longer length than I need. So it's easier to thread the little 2mm bead onto the wire, which I just need to kink the end of it. There we go. And just wrap or pass the wire to the outside edge of that loop. You see, pass it underneath and wrap twice. Then bring the bead up. No, so I'll wrap once, I meant. And bring the wire up ready. I'm going to do the same on the other side, and then we're going to add in the pearl to the eye. Now we've got both wires ready to add in the pearl on an 8mm pearl on either side. Use the Bead Reamer or a needle tool just to take away some of the coating, or the pearl coating on this side, so you open up the hole a little bit. It's shell pearl. The hole is quite big. It allows an 0.8mm wire through it, but because some of the coating is put on after the hole is made, you just need to take some of that away, and then you can thread through the 0.4mm wire on either side. There we go, just in a crisscross wrap. Press the pearl into place, and also just make sure there's no kinks in the wire as you pull it in. And now we're just going to wrap once more around this intersection, and then bring the wire up inside the loop, and we're going to add beads in the same way as we did the other loops, all the way around, and cut the top wire in at the other end. I'll come back to the end and talk through that bit. I'm just going to press that wire in, can you see, on either side, so it sits nicely. But we want the bead to be at the front of the eye. I don't want it sitting too much at the back of the fish, otherwise it won't sit nicely against the skin, so I want the eye to be quite prominent. Here is the eye section ready complete to add into the rest of the fish. I've worked all the way around and cut, and when I wrapped to the end, I wrapped slightly above the attachment and cut and tucked in the 0.4mm wire on either side. Press the setting down so the pearl is very prominent. What else have I done? I've just neatened up the wraps around with little plier squeezes to make sure they're neat and nicely packed together. And the reason why I could have set this pearl with its attachment to the centre, but because I needed to also work on these loops, I've slightly pulled that attachment, I suppose, to one side frontwards, just to make sure that I was able to work on this loop and add the bead in with the same wire. So that eye section is ready. I'll put that to one side. We're just going to work on adding a bead into the scale, one of the scales. So I'm going to start with one of the three scale sections, and I'm going to work on the middle one. So use a short length of wire, probably about 25cm length of 0.4mm wire, and wrap the midsection around the scale until you're halfway up on either side. And you can see I'm just packing the little wraps closely together, and you can use this technique for any sort of wrapping. Just make sure you can either press with your pliers, or you can, that's a tractor game pass, you can press with your fingernails if they're strong enough. And my fingernails are in such a dreadful state it doesn't matter anymore. But if you've got beautiful nails and you need to, keep them safe and healthy, just use side to side plier squeezes. So what you can do is just push. Can you see how I'm pushing round with the pliers, just to make sure that they're neat and packed together. So the next thing to do, without throwing things in the bag, which I've just done, they've rolled off the table, is again ream just the edge, the holes of the pearl. It's not not going through the whole pearl. It's just that little hole at the edge, and do that crisscross bead attachment that we did for quite a lot of the other for the eye and the fish's eye, little fish's eye, the earring's eye, and things like that. And add in a 6mm round pearl to the centre of this scale, and then wrap on up and cut at the top. I'll come back with the completed scales. You must not cut the wires on the 2 and the single scale. I'll show you exactly where you don't need to cut, because you need some of them for attachment processes together. I've also curled this scale around. When we first formed it, it was fairly flat. But what you need to do after you put the pearls in, you just need to curl it round. I'll show you this again at the end. Right, here are all the scales with beads added in. You can see I've cut the wires for the top 3, and I'm going to curl this around a little bit like so, because what we need to do is have it fitting along the face of the fish. So you probably need to curl it up a tiny bit more, like so. Can you see how that's going to happen, like that? Right. These other 2 rows, you need to leave some wire tails. So when you wrap along the side of the pearls, the side of the spaces straddling the pearls, just make sure that you don't cut these wire tails. You've got 2 wire tails here, so you only need 1. So pick the longest, or the one that least ragged, and trim away one of them. And so you have 3 wire tails emerging from. Oh, my little dog's so woofy today. She's been woofing all the time. So every time, so you might hear her woofing during the demonstration. So there's 3 wire tails coming from this one, and 2 from this other set of scales. So we're going to start attaching the scales to the fins and the eye in the next section. So we're now going to attach the eyes to the fins and the first row of the scales, the 3 in a row. So first of all, I've wrapped I've got about a I don't know, 50 centimetre length of 0.4mm one, wrapped it along the face section, or the gill section, for about, gosh, 12 wraps, something like that, just so that it basically is ready to wrap to the intersection of the first or the middle scale of that row of 3. So placing that, what I need to do is just bring this wire up over there, placing the scales into position right next to the fin section, making sure the fin section has the beautiful side uppermost. Just always check things, check your frames for markings, that you've got your unhammered side, or your smooth hammered side upwards, and if you want that effect. I'm holding with one hand. I'm going to wrap round, start to wrap round to join both frames together, and I'm just going to get a 2mm bead and just pop that on. I wish I could do that more quickly. There we go. And then wrap around, adding a bead at the same point in time as you're joining the frames together, and wrap once again, and then wrap underneath, you see, passing underneath the frames, and bring the wire upwards like so. I'm just going to do the same to the other side, adding in a 2mm Amazonite. Do you know, these are so tiny, but they've been they've been faceted and drilled, and they're beautiful, and they add such an impact, and they're genuine gemstones that are seed beads, so they're something lovely to work with. So I've attached that in the same way, but of course if you've got seed beads you can work with them, but it's sometimes just nice to work with gemstones in your designs that's so beautiful like this. So now we've got one scale attached. Looks quite solid already, but we're going to add in the eye now. Now bringing in the eye, again turn it around so you've got these 2 loops closest to the wire tails, holding again everything together with one hand. I'm going to pass the wire through. I'm just checking, yeah. You've got a little space to the side of the bead, on the outside of this bead that you've got attached here into the eye frame, and pass the wire around again. If you want to work flat at this point, just to make sure everything lies flat side to side, you can do that, and then pass the wire through. I'm going to pick it up again. You can see that act of placing it flat has made that wrap round in position and not have one frame coming above the other or overlapping each other, which is what you don't want. I'm going to wrap 3 times here, if you can find that space, because that just gives that strength of attachment. Just make sure the wraps don't cross over each other. Take care with your wraps to place them in position, and then just wrap, pulling that to one side a little bit so that I've got a gap to wrap that next to it, just around the gill frame. And you can do a few things, just squeeze either side pliers just to squeeze those wraps together, and then you can press the plier handle perhaps just to flatten those wraps down. I'm going to work along both sides of the gill frame, the face frame, in the same, attached this side, and also work onto the end, attaching beads in the same way as I did here, and then I'll come back and talk you through that. So you can see here now, I've attached the first row 3 scales to the fin and the eye shape all together. You can see the 2 attachment points for the eye, and I've wrapped along the gill frame and attached just at the shoulders, I suppose, here of the fins, with attaching another little 2mm Amazonite, and then just wrapped along that little frame here. A little bit tricky to get in there, but you can tuck these wraps away and then cut and tuck in the wire ends. And so that's all attached now, and that will eventually fit into this fish frame like so, you see. We're just going to show you the techniques for attaching the next row in here. We're going to do that now, so I'll just show you how to do that. So bringing in this next row, we're going to attach this wire to the midsection of the beads here, and you might need to make a little bit of a gap by just pressing the pearl away a little bit. This is going to come up from underneath. Some of them may come up from the top of the previous scale, and some might come from the base. But what we're going to do is just pop this wire in. I'm going to make a little bit more of a gap, so I'm going to just push that bead a little bit away. Just be careful not to, I mean, it's the underside, you don't want to scratch the pearl really, but let's hopefully you can make a little bit of space. So bring that in, there we are, I've got a bit of space. Bring it, try and make sure that it's, let me think, essentially as you can. So try and click it in between the wraps already in place if you can. If you want to work flat on a table, that might help just to keep everything flat and in place. Just going to bring it up. This bit's a bit fiddly. Once you've got this attachment in place, everything's so much more easier. You see I've started to make a little gap there. So pull that into place and thread on a 2mm Amazonite. It's going to let me do it. The working on the beading mat means that the beads don't roll around, and you can find that little hole quite easily. You can see it. Right, there we go. So I've threaded on 2mm Amazonite. I'm going to just hold that in place. Yeah, that's lovely. And then thread it through the same spot again. So as close to the first wrap through as you can. Doesn't matter which side you get it, you pop it in on, as long as you can get it through. You only need to do it on one side. Click it in as close as you can. Again, working flat. And then what I'm going to do is just wrap closely in and then wrap around this frame. I've kicked it now. Once. Click it into place amongst the wraps already in position, and pushing it down with my fingernail a little bit near the frame. Cut as close as you can to the inside frame edge, and then smooth that down with chain nose plier tips, and that, run your finger over, and that's attached. Now I'm going to attach the others in pretty much the same way, but I've just got to bend these little wire curls up so that they attach to the curled. There we are. Just bend that up and bend that up. And I'm just going to do that, and I'll come back to you in a minute when I've attached this row and the bottom row as well, which needs to attach to the middle section like so, but it's exactly the same technique. So I'll come back to you with it all finished so I can show you it. Now here is the section all ready to attach the fish, with the eye section attached and 3 rows of scales attached in the same way. And you can see as I've slightly pushed or bent these, or moved these little curls so they really touch against this curved row of the first 3 scales. Just going to slightly tidy up some of this. You can go in there with a little handle and just push these attachments in. I've cut the wire tails after, so 0.4mm wire tails here after attaching them with the beads in here, with 2 wraps around each side, and again on this side very similar. Just neaten things up, just with little plier squeezes. Just be careful not to fracture the little Amazonites. And you're ready to start attaching this into the frame. It's going to fit in like so, and it all looks like it's fairly well adjusted. You might need to pull things around a bit and move these fins outwards, things like that, just so that they fit over the frame. And also, if you feel that everything's distorted, just put it back over the diagram and just reshape things so that you feel that everything will look, because you really want these fishes to look really similar to each other. So what we're going to do is now work through attaching this to the rest of the frame. What we're going to do now is attach this beaded component into the main fish frame, and I've attached a metre length of 0.4mm wire at the midsection of the 0.4mm wire in the little mouth, and threaded on some 2mm amazonite beads just to get that ready. So placing this whole section over the fish section, with the mouth section as close, with the curls of the mouth section as close as you can, I'm just going to wrap around at the top edge of the fish. I'm going to wrap around the top of the mouth and the curl to start to anchor them together. That's going to take probably about 2 or 3 wraps to do that. Just make sure I catch it all in place. And it'll all, as I say, as you attach and work along the fish, it's going to just be more easy as you progress along the fish. So another little attachment here to make it secure. No harm in doing it a third time, because this is one of the main anchor points at this end, like that. And then what we're going to do now is work along just the body of the fish on the face. Just make sure we don't catch that top of the head, and just work around. You just need to thread the wire in at the base of the tail and just work along. I'm going to attach the other side, so I've got that secure. So I'm going to turn the fish a little bit so I can work from the other side. When you've got long lengths of wire, everything tends to move around a bit and you catch things, and I've got things flying about all over the table at the moment. I think that's about the right place. A couple of wraps here as well. We just need to make sure that when we leave enough room to attach jump rings at these little mouth loops, because you don't want to sort of well, that's the attachment points you see for the fish. See how I'm doing that. Right, now you can just literally just have a look and see where you place this. You need to make sure that's on top. Place it down on the mat if you want to, just to sort of rearrange things. I want to make sure that that's up a little bit and not in the way of the tail. So I need that. I will eventually want this tail curl below. So I'm going to move that downwards a little bit. So I want it really out of the way. Okay, that's a bit better. So I've now got that started to be attached, and I'm going to work along it does look a little bit complicated, I suppose. I mean, there's a lot going on, but just make sure when you wrap along, it's just easier to wrap along like this from the back of the fish, like so. Just gently thread it down so you're not catching this fin section, and you're just wrapping along the side of the face of the fish. I'm going to show you just one attachment. I think what I did, I'll show you the attachment points as I go down the fish anyway when we talk through them, so you know exactly where we attached. I'm just going to move this around a little bit. I want to attach at the lower, just one of these eye sections here. So I chose this one because I thought it would just maybe made sure that I had the fish in the right place, and it was 1 point more for this eye, because that's the least it needs quite a lot of attachment at the top end. That's only attached to the scales at the other end, which can wobble about a bit. The attachments aren't as strong. So I threaded through the back of one of these little eye loops. So once, you only need to do it once really, and pulled through, and that's now attached to the frame. If you want to do it twice, you can, and then just continue wrapping along the face frame. I'm going to do that on both sides until I get to this section and just show you the attachment here. I've got to a point where I've worked down the side of the fish after attaching it to the lips and one of these lower eye lobes, and I've just got to a point where I've worked on either side down to the gills. Before I do that, I'm just going to show you a little bit of adjustment that we need just to make sure it fits along, these fins fit along the body of the fish. So a little push here, perhaps. It's not such a bother to get this bit to fit in because you'll pull it into place. But this side is a little bit more tighter fit. So this will pull down to here. This will squeeze in like so below this section. And if you find that's too long, just bend this up a little bit more, just so it fits away from so it comes in here a bit more below this little curl. Okay, so that's like that. And then what you need to do perhaps is squish this section and just make sure that fits in. I'm pushing it against the side of the fish like that, and then this will fit like so. But I'm just going to curl this up a little bit more and away, like so it's out of the way of all these other curls. So you're going to have a lot of curls in one spot here, so just work on this a little bit to get to fit against the fish a little bit further up the fish. Okay, so now we're going to attach the gills section. So I'm going to wrap around all 3 frames. You've got 3 frames you can wrap around, so find a little space, thread the wire through. I'm going to attach around 3 frames, the curl of the scale frame, the gill frame, and the body frame, all in one go. 2 to 3 wraps, pressing, keeping the wraps side by side, and then back along the frame only for a few wraps before we continue working down, because I'm just going to attach the other side. Let's make sure this is. I'm just going to pull this round. You can also pull the beads around us just a little bit to get them to fit. Can you see? A little bit of pressure, because you'll need to get, it's not a straight band of scales, it has to curve around a body. So a little bit of pushing around will gently on a mat will help it shape, because you don't want to pull the attachments out of place. With this section now, I'm just going to attach around the fin, the scales, and the body frame with a couple of wraps again, and back on to just the body frame, gently threading it through and back along the body frame only. Now the rest of the attachment is pretty similar. You're going to work along this body. I'm going to do that and then come back to a point where I'm just about here, just below this last little set of scales, because we're just going to finish off here, and I'll talk through where I've attached. And the main thing to do with here when you get to these spots is catch the intersection of the fins. Back with you in a few minutes. I'm just going to show you, before we finish the whole side of the fish, is just show you an intersection wrap. So I've got down to a point where the intersection of the fins are, side fins are sitting against the frame. So just make sure when you wrap round, I'm catching in that as well. 2 wraps in, making sure they sit side by side, not overlapping. And if you need to, just gently, I'm just going along the body frame just now, gently squash, not squash, and so manipulate this round and slightly squash this, and then it won't try and run round to the back again. Right, I'm going to definitely work down both sides and meet you at the other side ready to attach the final beads. I've wrapped along both lower and upper edges of the fish, basically attaching the wrapping wire to the curls where they touch against the body, and to the fin into bends where they touch against the body, like so. Another little wrap here along this curl, and the same here along all these curls, fin intersections, curls here where they touched against the body, and the fins are here, and then lastly this little curl. I've ended up just where this tail section curl touches against the main body frame, and we're going to start working on this section here now. So first of all, wrap around this top section of the tail, and what you can do is just squeeze this all together a little bit, okay, just to make sure it all sort of fits into place twice, and then wrap around the intersection of the fin there twice, and stop here, and do the same on the other side. Might need a bit of adjustment, so I'm just going to wrap around this section twice. We're going to hide all this with a bead in a minute, or a pearl in a minute, so don't worry too much. Twice here, and then bring the wire up. Squeeze those wraps together a little bit with the pliers, and then just do a little bit of compression movement here, just to bring everything. I'm going to pull this into place, pulling this slightly into place here, so it will fit together. So we want this at the end of the base of the tail to fit together nicely. So I'm just going to, I've reamed a 6mm pearl ready. It, again, a very small ream needed. It's only the outer coating really. Thread both 0.4mm wires through for a crossover attachment. I'm going to use pliers to help me pull through. Sometimes I do that if the wires are awkward, or it's useful to use pliers to pull wires through in small spaces as well. So I'm going to make sure this pearl sits above the base of the tail. Pull through. I'm going to hold the pearl in place while I pull the wires through. And then what I need to do is have the wire coming through that second fin. If I can get it to sit nicely. It might not want to go there, so let's just get it to sit a bit better. Let's just get it to sit better first before I do anything else. And then get that above. And really, actually, what I'm going to do now is not go to that second fin. Just going to flare this out a little bit. I'm going to squash this together underneath that pearl, and the wrap to the inside edge of both those inside fins once. Okay. There. Now, one wire I really want to attach a little Amazonite on with, and the other wire I'm going to wrap underneath it. So I'm just going to get this into position, because again this is slipped up in between. I really want it to sit in front of this tail section, so I'm going to push this into place a little bit more, pop it on the mat, just help you ground it a little bit as you push these sections together. There we go. That's going to work now. Right, so one wire to come up. I'm going to pass it to the other side of the fins, bringing the wire upwards, and the other wire is going to go to the other side of the fin, and then I'm going to pull that quite tight for attachment. Okay, pulling that quite tight. So I'm going to draw the tail together and pull that together. You can see with a wrap, I'm going to wrap down the tail fin. I haven't quite cut the other wire yet. You can see how the tail pulls together now. I'm just going to cut that at the back now on the inside edge. And I've got another wire that we're going to use to pull this together now. We're going to add in, you can add in as many Amazonites as you like, to be honest, down the little tail, but you could go all the way down to the end, couldn't you, to add a bit of strength, especially say if you're using a necklace where this tail is going to be just on its own, because there's all sorts of patterns you can put these little fishes in. You know, you can have them as a hanging pendant like that, or you can have them swimming around a necklace, or you can pattern them in I'm going to tessellate them in a pattern, a group of 3 fishes in my final design. So I'm going to wrap round this lower part. I've threaded on Amazonite, wrapped it around the lower part of the tail again. I need to make sure those wraps sit quite high underneath the pearl, so I need to grip it into the wraps already in place. That might be a bit fiddly. Try your best anyway to get into the wraps already in place on that side. So now I'm going to pull that into place, and that starts to cinch that tail together again. And you also need, Amazonite is not quite, there's always sometimes the wire will kink and the Amazonite won't sit properly, so you just got to go back in, I'm afraid, and just push it back down to the base of where it was attached, and then you don't have a kind of excess bit of wire. Now I'm going to pop down this side for a few wraps. Nothing to stop you going back up and maybe weave across to another couple of wraps here. And that's brought that tail together nicely. Okay. I'm just going to get rid of that now. One wrap round here. Push the ball up into position. There we go. That's it. Now, nearly finished with this little fish. Make sure that's cut at the back, really close into the frame. I'm nearly wearing out these pliers because they've done a lot of work. I do wear lots of pliers out. These ones are lovely little Xerons. But I use, they've cut hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of jump rings. Now let's just do the last little bit of adjustment. Is to sit these little curls around the pearl to protect it, and also just act as a little support on the side. So I'm just going to curl this up a bit more, and then we're going to just press this into position next to this pearl, and it acts as a little support around the side of it and a detail to the tail. That's more or less it, really. I'm just going to talk you through. In some of the other fishes I haven't woven down as much, you can't see as much of this weave. Let's just attach that tail together. So I've made 2 little fishes up like so, ready for a necklace. I've got to make a third up for the 3 fish necklace. I'm just going to quickly talk you through the single pendant necklace so that you can make that, and then I'll come back after I've made the 3rd fish. I've already talked through this section, but we're just going to talk through the attachments here. So I've made these lovely dangles, and they just add movement to the necklace itself. So you need 5 head pin dangles, and I made these with the 8mm pearls, and just hung them with 5mm jump rings, rather than directly from the tail, and it adds that extra little bit of fluidity. You've got 2 joints to this attachment, and that fluidity is much better, and these can swing independently. There's a lot more sort of gentle movement than if I attach them directly to the fin. They would just swing about, but this has a lot more movement, and it's quite nice then to wear like that. So there's the single pendant necklace with the fishes swimming round. I've again talked about those, and now I'm just going to go make another fish. Basically you need 2, 1 facing left and 2 facing right to make the 3 fish necklace. So I'm going to make another right, I suppose right-handed fish. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do now then. Back in a minute. I'm just going to make the hook end of the clasp first of all. So I'm just going to take a 20 centimetre length of wire, probably 15 centimetres will be enough actually, and just start to make a little curl at one end. Just trim the end of the curl. I just use round nose pliers, the tip of round nose pliers to make that curl. And trim the end of the curl and reinsert those pliers to make a further curl in the wire. Now just grip that end with the chain nose pliers and use your fingers just to manipulate round a little shepherd's hook crook shape, and I'll just push with my finger to make a little bend outwards just at the base of the hook. And then what we're then going to do, you can thread a bead on, but the pearls in this collection allow a 0.8mm wire through. You could thread a pearl on and make the whole clasp off a 0.8mm wire, but I'm just going to make a little loop flaring outwards first with the wire using chain nose pliers, then round nose pliers, form a loop round, and then we're going to make a wrap loop to form the clasp round, and then round again, and then round again 3 times around the hook, and then just going to cut the wire to about 12mm maybe using flash cutter pliers. Make another little curl, cut that again. Oops, I have to hoover up the floor afterwards. Then do another little curl. And we're just going to do some hammering. So I'm going to push that outwards like so and hammer the piece. So I'm going to hammer the back of it with a small faced hammer. You could use a large one, it doesn't matter, but I'm putting the loop on the edge of the steel block and hammering away. Then I'm going to rotate round and hammer the hook hook side of the clasp. This gives a lovely flat and reflected surface, and also hardens the clasp. I also want to hammer this little curl. I'm going to hammer the back of it, so I'm placing it with hook side upwards, and I'm just going to hammer that on the edge of the block, then use my pliers just to fold that back down and crush it against the hook, and then you've got a hook clasp with a lovely curl detail on it to add into your jewellery. We're now going to make a loop end of the clasp. So taking a similar amount of wire, about 15 centimetres, start about 1/3 from the end to make a little loop. This is like basically a big wrap loop clasp, a big wrap loop basically. Clamp across the base of the loop and make a little bend outwards with the shorter end of the wire, and flare or kick the wire downwards to form the sort of main part of the clasp. Push that back into place. Grip the base of the loop with chain nose pliers and pull the wire around once. And that's that loop end. You can thread a bead onto this, But again, I'm just going to make a little loop on its own. So placing the round nose pliers really close to the first wrap that you made, just kicking that out a bit, make a fairly large loop. I'm sort of about 2/3 down the round nose pliers. You can see how I'm manipulating it. I want to make it the same size as the hook end so that they look about the same size. So grip that round with the chain nose pliers, grip that loop, pull that around so that the wire flares out on the other side. Okay, so we've got two wires projecting from either side. Cut them both. You can cut one a bit longer and one a bit shorter because we're going to just add a bit of a swirly detail. All these cut ends of wire I'll use to make jump rings later on, so don't throw them away. So I'm just going to swirl these upwards using the same curling techniques that we used for the hook end of the clasp, using the tips of your round nose pliers, cutting the ends of the curls. Now we're going to just swirl this in and swirl that one in. Well, it's not cut properly, is it? Let's cut it again. And also I can make that swirl a bit better, can't I? So I'm going to undo that really carefully, because once you bend it, you start to work hard on it and it won't necessarily curl as well. So I'm going to squish that in a bit, not make a hash of it. There we go. And now use chain nose pliers perhaps to pull that around and manipulate that into a nice curl. I'm going to do the same with the other side. Okay, so I want that one to be it's a bit longer than the other one. I want that one to sit above it. Okay, so I'm going to hammer those now. So I'm going to bend those outwards ready for hammering. I'm going to hammer that loop. So again, bringing in your steel block and your 1 ounce hammer, I'm going to hammer the back of the loop, the big loop. Oh, before that, before hammering, you can change the shape of this. So I could make it a diamond shape with a little squish. Make that a diamond. So it makes it a little bit more kind of elegant. There we go. A little bit of squish there, clamping either side of these bends just to make it a nice little diamond or kite shape. So hammering the back of that so it's nice and flat and elegant, and on the loop and on the back of these curls. So pop the loop downwards, the small loop downwards, big loop upwards, and hammer these curls. Okay, and now taking that away, we can just fold these down and make us a little detail on the clasp, on the hook side. I'm just going to fold it down so they don't quite overlap, and it looks quite pretty then. All I'm going to do is just squeeze those wraps down together so they are close to each other. That's better. There we go. So that's an elegant clasp on either side. What I might just do also is clamp that a little bit closer here. There we go. That's it. So that's ready to use in your designs. Now we're just going to make some jump rings for the connectors, to join connectors and fishes and things like that together. Most of the time I'm using a 5mm jump ring, that's external diameter, made on a 3mm mandrel, and a 7mm external diameter jump ring made on a 5mm mandrel. You can use gizmo rods as well, like these as well, to make the just come out there. You can use gizmo rods too to make the jump rings of those diameters. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly make the jump rings. I'm just going to make the large ones for the minute. The small ones are made in exactly the same way. Leave them on the mandrel for as long as you can, because they actually gain their sort of memory of being in a circle and are less springy when cut. They don't spring apart so much. So really ideally you should leave them on the mandrel for a while before cutting them, and use up any scraps of wire that you can. Every so often just wind on them on a mandrel, put them in the box and cut them when you need them. So bring flush cutter pliers up. You can saw them if you like, but flush cutters are pretty good for making small amounts quite quickly too. Flush cut with the straight edge nearest the edge of the jump ring you want to make, and then turn the pliers round and insert them into the next spiral of wire, cutting them as close to the first cut as you made, so you can make a complete ring. And you can see, because I rotated those pliers, you've got a really straight flush cut edge. That flush means a straight edge. And if I bring this up, hopefully it might not focus. You can see there's a straight edge on the cut, the flush cut, so that the jump ring will fit together. To open and close your jump ring, use your chain nose pliers, 2 pairs, and a swing from side to side until the 2 edges. You can hear that slight grating noise. That's them fitting together. That's a jump ring ready. If you do it the wrong way round and you use the wrong side, so let's turn it the wrong way, so with a kind of triangular blade edge towards the jump ring end, and I turn it round, both ends will be really squashed and triangular, and they won't fit together as nicely. You can see perhaps that's got a triangular point. Oh, won't focus. Triangular pointed edge, and the jump ring is just, it's basically, you can see the difference. If I zoom in to those jump rings, hopefully you can see the difference between the 2 edges there. One will be fitting flush together, and then one will have a bit of a gap. Right, so just make loads of jump rings, and the 5mm ones will be a bit smaller in diameter, and they'll look a little bit like this, and you can use those through your design. To work on the connector for the necklace, you need to progress with the eye the same way as you do for the earrings, by filling the lie section of the frame with a 6mm pearl, with exactly the same frame that you made for the earrings, like one like that. But what you do need to do is fill the body differently, with some 2mm amazonite, 6mm pearl, and an 8mm pearl. I'll just quickly show you how to do that. And the necklace connectors will end up connecting like so, and I'll talk through that later. To add gemstones into the little fish, I've taken a 30 to 40cm length of wire, of 0.4mm wire, and wound the midsection around the middle of this little fish, at the intersection of the tail bend. I'll zoom in a bit, and I've just threaded 2 little amazonite onto either side, ready to attach them to the fish near the tail end, and you can see how I'm wrapping that round on that side. So I'm going to wrap around that side, up the tail a little bit. I'm not quite ready. I'm almost ready to attach the tail. I think I might attach this little tail curl now with one wrap and stop there. And I'm just going to do the same on the other side. Wrap across the tail. Wrap across, and I might just attach that tail curl now to start attaching that together. You can see how I can make it a little bit easier to attach it by gently moving this curl away. I can move it back after we've done everything, just so I can pop this wire into this little space more easily without having to thread it through. It makes the whole process a little bit more quick to actually perform. Let me just have a look. I just want to make sure this is squeezed in a little bit so that it's not too wide as a tail space at the moment. So I'm almost at a level, I think, where I can add in a little 6mm bead. So I'm going to pop that down flat on the table, get the 6mm bead, and I'll show you now a little technique for just widening the hole. It doesn't need much of a widen, it's just so you can get it 2 0.4mm wires into it. I just popped a little needle tool. You can use it oh gosh, what it's called? It's like a little pearl file. I'll think of the name later on, where you can actually just open up the hole a little bit. And I put one 0.4mm wire through one side of the bead and the pearl, and another through the other end to the other. Pull tight into place, very similar to the way you did it with the eye. And there, the little tail, the pearl needs to sit above the tail, not in between it, because we don't want it to splay out too much. And then I can carry on wrapping up the fish. So I'm going to wrap a few more times around here, and I'm going to add a 6mm pearl in this very similar way to this one. And what I'll do is I'll come back to you ready to finish off the fish in a few minutes. Here you can see now I've wrapped up the body of the fish and working inside the fins here, and attached another 8mm pearl to the middle of the body. Just made sure it sits above the level of the fish and not below it or in between it, so it doesn't splay the body of the fish too much. This is the other word I meant to say was this bead reamer. If you have a bead reamer to make the little end of the pearl open up a little bit, it's only because some of the coating of the pearl has sat over the hole a little bit. It makes it difficult for you to thread the 0.4mm wires on it. So you just gently ream it. Only at the very edges you can get 0.4mm wires through easily. So I've wrapped up both sides, ready to attach the rest of the frame here, the fish frame here. Go for the closed sides first, leaving the open side open, so it just makes it easier. So wrap 3 times at the top, I suppose the top of the fin, and wrap up the body, wrap up the head a little bit. Like that. Maybe you can wrap up all the way up to the eye if you like. What did I do for this one? I wrapped up about halfway along the head until it just got a little bit awkward to pass the wire through. But as long as you do all your connectors the same, it's fine. So just wrapped on along up here. I'll stop here now, and then just cut and tuck in the wire. So cut as closely as you can on the inside edge of the frame with flush cutter pliers, and then smooth the wire down with a smoothing motion of the pliers. I'm working on the bead mat because it's quite a good dark background for you to see the silver against. Now thread the wire through the gill section and pull everything tight back through the leading edge of that lower fin, and probably 2 or 3 times I think I did it like this. You can see how I'm pulling the frame in tight, and it just cinches everything together, attaches everything, so everything's really bound well together. And if you need to make this space a bit bigger, because in some fishes you might notice this little space is a little bit small, all you need to do is insert some pliers here and wiggle them about a bit gently from the back, so you don't mark the front, and make this space a little bit wider for you. So three around here, and then I went back into the fin and wrap down the front of the fin a few times, and then cut this in the same way as I did the top. So moving on to so what I'll do is quickly do that. Probably did it about 4 or 5 times. You could even weave these little fins if you felt like doing it. There's all sorts of things you could do, but I prefer to leave them open just to give lots of space to the piece. Sometimes it's quite nice to do that, and just the emphasis is on the pearls and in the body. So I've got 2 mirror image little fishes, which I can just squash that a little bit down so it looks a bit better. There's a little bit of an edge there. That's better. And I've got two little mirror image fishes that I could use for earrings or on the sides of the necklace. And then what I've done, when I put them in the necklace, I undo the clasp, you can see I've got them swimming round the necklace, one facing one way, one facing the other way, with 5mm jump rings linking the little lips to a 7mm pair of 7mm jump rings, and another two 5mm jump rings linking to the tails. And that's how I've made those sides up. And then up to the clasp, I've just popped some pearl loop connectors linked by pairs of 5mm, 7mm, then 5mm jump rings up to the clasp on either side. You can do that to the length of the necklace you really want. So you can adjust once you've got those fishes in, three fishes on either side. So you need obviously 3 left hand and 3 right hand fishes, and you can complete the sides of the necklace. We're now going to work on making this the main fish now, which you can use as a single pendant, as in this case, or in the 3 fish necklace, which I'll show you at the end because I haven't made it yet, because some of these demonstration fishes are going to make up the 3 fish necklace as well. So we'll move on to that now. We're now going to make a wrap loop connector for use in rosary linking through the necklace. And I'm going to attach one to one end of the clasp so you can see attaching to a loop. So I've got a hook end of the clasp. I'm going to take an 8mm pearl and a short length of 20mm wire. Let's get the wire through this. There we are. So place I've got it probably too long. I reckon 10 centimeters is easy enough, maybe 8 centimeter length of 0.8mm wire. Bend either side of the pearl just for the minute, just to hold it into place. And we're going to do one wrap loop with nothing attached to it and one wrap loop attached to the clasp. So insert round nose pliers, and I'm going to put sort of a reasonable size loop. You can, as long as you get all the loops the same, your jewellery will look really professionally finished if you make the loops the same size. I'm going to just hold that like so and clamp it a little bit. I haven't quite finished the wrap yet because we haven't attached it to anything, and we don't want to close the loop if we want to attach it to anything. Another little wrap around here. Don't want too much play in the bead. So if you find that it's too loose and there's a play in the bead, rotate the loop closer with a movement like that to rotate it close to the bead. Right, that's ready to attach. I might just close that loop though, and we can attach that to another piece with jump rings, or we can attach it to another. There we are. I've just done one wrap round for the minute. I'm going to attach this to the clasp just by threading it into the loop. There we go. And clamp down. Close that loop by wrapping it around, and I'm not going to wrap it around too much over the bead, but you can add detail like a little bead cap by wrapping it over the bead. I'm just going to do a little wrap around with 1 or 2 because I want as much of the pearl on show as possible. I don't want to hide it. And cut as close to that wrap on either side with flush cutter pliers. You see that little cut edge, and it just needs a little smooth down with the tips of your pliers in the direction of the wire, just to clamp it down and make sure it smooths around and that there's nothing sharp to catch on the clothing or skin. So that's your first rosary linked section, and you can continue that down the necklace. or you can connect them to other pieces of design with jump rings and all sorts of things. So there's all sorts of versatility there. Right, I've made my 3 fishes, 2 facing left and one facing left and two facing right, and I'm going to make them up into my necklace pattern. I've also made plenty of head pin dangles. I've made 9. I've got some jump rings, 5mm external diameter and some 7mm. I've also made up a chain linked jump ring linked chain with wrap looped 8mm pearl connectors. I've done 5 of those, made a clasp, loop and hook clasp, and linked them with pairs of 5mm, 7mm and 5mm jump rings, again all the way down. So I'm going to just look at combinations, and there's plenty of combinations. Obviously you can have the single pendant on its own like I showed before, or you can have the two fishes in mirror image next to each other. You could have fishes swimming around like that, or my goodness, swimming away like that either side with another fish underneath. Fishes just coming down like so, with or without another fish. So you can have all sorts of different ways of doing this necklace, sort of like so. There's all sorts of different patterns and exciting ways you could combine the fish design. Anyway, I'm going to come back with the finished design and show you the assembly. Right, here's the assembled necklace with the fishes facing left and then right, or this right hand fish suspended from between them. So each fish on either side is joined to the chain with a 5mm, 7mm pair of jump rings linked to 2 5mm external diameter, linked to each little lip there like so. In between the 2 top fins is first a 7mm and a 5mm jump ring, just to trap that in place and keep it from migrating, and keep them from running past each other. But the tension in the necklace should keep them separate. And then this lower fish is linked to either the other fishes with 2 5mm jump rings here and 2 5mm jump rings through the little lip here. And then I've suspended 2 8mm dangles on either side on the lateral side of the tail, on the side of the tail, and then just as in the pendant, I've got 5 dangles coming from the lower fins and the lower tail and the fins there. So I hope you enjoy making either the pendant or the necklace and or the earrings. I'm going to put stills of all the projects at the end of the video so that you can just really study them and maybe take a screenshot or something like that and then work from them. So please tag me on Facebook when you post what you make, because I do love seeing your designs. And if you need any help, find me on JM Guest Designer Rachel Norris. Take care then. Bye bye.